So I encourage you to come by the museum. If you can't come by the museum, you're welcome to go to our website, thehealthmuseum.org, to get more virtual programming or to become a member. So with that, I want to just tell you all, we have partnered with the Women's Fund for many, many years, and it's a great organization. We are so excited to support this very, very timely conversation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Linda Rhodes, Executive Director of the Women's Fund.
Thank you, John. And John and I go back longer than we care to admit. We truly appreciate the continuing partnership and value it greatly. And we're proud to bring you another informative Doc Talk today. We really look forward to the day that we can be back in your auditorium in person, sharing, doing Doc Talk together, and live on our Facebook account. I'm Linda Rhodes. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Fund. We're thrilled that you're here with us today for another great Doc Talk. For 41 years, the Women's Fund has been empowering Houston area girls and women to be advocates for their health and wellness by providing free publications, curriculum-based classes, workshops, and lectures like today's Doc Talk. We are excited to be in this new space, and we are grateful that you made the time to tune in. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all of us in many ways, forcing individuals, corporations, and organizations like John and mine to pivot to new platforms as a means to work, learn, play, and socialize. We have all had to become more resilient to exist and thrive in our new normal. One consequence of the pandemic has made it even more vital that all women and girls have access to current health education information, especially those in our at-risk and underserved communities. The Women's Fund is successfully addressing this challenge by offering close to 30 virtual presentations each month. All programs are free, that's right, completely free, open to the public. Topics will vary each month, but will help participants maintain optimal physical, mental, financial, and emotional health and wellness. Beginning September 16th, we are launching a new weekly series, which will feature guest speakers and coincide with recognized National Health Awareness Months. September series will focus on childhood cancer and feature speakers from the American Cancer Society, University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and Texas Children's Hospital. October series will focus on domestic violence and will feature speakers from Aid for Victims of Domestic Violence and the Houston Area Women's Shelter. I encourage everyone, if you're interested at all, to go to our website and go to the events page. And the events site, our website is thewomensfund.org, and then just go to events and you can see a listing of all the presentations we offer. I would like to thank and recognize the John P. McGovern Foundation for providing funding for today's programming. Their support for more than 35 years to the Women's Fund has led to our success. Dr. Goldner, thank you for sharing your expertise today and taking time from your private practice to share this valuable information with our community. At this time, I want to please welcome our good friend Casey Curry, who will be moderating today's discussion. You may remember her from her days at ABC Channel 13 as the meteorologist. Currently, she is the Corporate Citizenship Director for Alliant Group. Casey, thank you for your friendship and your partnership and for being here with us today. You're on.
Thanks so much, Linda. Yay. So I love being with you guys. I'm always thrilled when you ask me to be a part of your conversations. I not only enjoy the conversation, but I come away every single time knowing so much. I'm really excited today to get the conversation started. But before we do, I want to remind everybody that at the end of our conversation, we're going to have about 10 or 15 minutes to answer your questions. So just kind of hold those, put them in the chat as we kind of go along, and we'll get to a lot of them when we get kind of towards the end of the program. We're currently streaming live on Facebook for both Museum and the Women's Fund pages. The Women's Fund will post a recording of this up on their website in the next week or so. And that's always fun. You can always go back and kind of watch it or share it with friends, that as you go through and you're like, wow, this really, I know would appeal to my friend so-and-so, and share that video with them. Now, before we get started, you know, we've always got rules when we're doing these virtual meetings. They're always a little different than the in-person rules. If you're not already muted, go ahead and mute yourself. If you've got any questions, as we talked about, just kind of hold those until the end, or put them in the chat as we go along, because we want our guest to make sure that she's focused on her presentation, and then we'll get to those questions when we're done. And with that, I want to introduce Dr. Brooke Goldner. We're so excited to have this conversation today, and I'll let Dr. Goldner introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Well, hello. I'm Dr. Goldner. I have a practice here in Houston, and it's actually, thankfully, a telemedicine practice, because with the pandemic, I was ready to go. And my practice is largely in disease reversal. So I help people with reversing chronic inflammatory illnesses, especially autoimmune diseases, using supermarket foods. I actually myself had lupus since I was 16, and 15 years ago next month, it'll be 15 years ago that I completely reversed the illness, all the labs, and have been off all medicines and changed the way I practice medicine. So that's what I do for others now, is I help them learn how to actually accelerate their own body's ability to repair itself and to be as healthy as they possibly can.
So Dr. Goldner, why don't you start off by kind of talking about this huge category of disorders and diseases that really fall into autoimmune disorders? That's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's estimated to be perhaps 80 autoimmune diseases. And, you know, there's a huge amount of people that are affected by them. The estimates differ. So anywhere from 15 to 50 million Americans. The NIH estimates about 25 million. So many, many people have them. And most common ones I see are Hashimoto's, that affects the thyroid, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, which affects the skin, as well as things like lupus. And as I said, they're very common, and they're caused by a disruption in your immune function because of dramatic amounts of inflammation. And the inflammation can come from many different sources in your life, from stress, from poor diet or insufficient nutrition in your diet, and as well as other kind of lifestyle issues that could be happening, exposure to different kinds of things in your environment. There's many different triggers that can start it. But as I said, they're very common, and normally, once they're started, it's kind of like a forest fire. You know, we have fires raging on the west coast of our country right now. Once that fire started, it often continues to spark new ones and get worse over time. Unless you do something to intervene in terms of your lifestyle, you can actually, you know, call in the helicopters and the planes and the fire trucks to come in and start putting them out again. And that's really what my focus is.
And so you mentioned a little bit in your intro about how your focus is now shifted in your practice, but did your experience with lupus growing up get you on your general kind of path into medicine?
Sure. So I am actually, I'm a child of immigrants. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So they were prisoners in World War II, and, you know, they starved and suffered. They lost a lot of family in the war. And after the war was over, they were in Poland. After the war was over, when my mom was a child, they came here to the States to try to start afresh, away from all of the trauma that they'd endured when they were younger. So I was brought here to live the American dream, as it were. My grandmother had a 4th grade education. My grandfather had a 6th grade education. And my mom was the first one, you know, her and her brother were the first ones to go to college. They went to community college in New York. My mom actually came in on a boat through Ellis Island back in the day. So I was raised, you know, with the values of appreciating freedom and being grateful for life, where I could wake up every day and be free. So no matter what hit me, I was able to really move through it without feeling a lot of the, I think a lot of people get very hopeless and despair when they get sick young. And my family was one that I was raised by fighters, you know. So they kept me very focused on what matters most to you. You know, that this is something that's happening to you, but it's not who you are. And it's not going to take away your ability to live your dream. So, you know, I think that was one of the biggest things that they were able to give me, that gift they gave me, is that you are not your circumstances and you never stop fighting for yourself. So for me, being 16 and being in kidney failure, you know, I had to go through what was at the time experimental treatments. because they really didn't know what to do besides high-dose steroids back then. Now, since then, there's more fancy treatments, but not really much better outcomes. But for me at the time, I did an experimental treatment where they gave me 2 years of chemotherapy to try to shut my immune system off from 16 to 18, because they were hoping, if lupus is a situation where your immune system attacks your body, well, let's just shut off the immune system with high doses of chemotherapy, because when people have cancer and you give them chemotherapy, that's one of the side effects that they don't like, is that the immune system stops working and then the person with cancer dies of an infection, right? So they did that to me intentionally. So every month they kept raising the dose higher and higher. And then I had to go to high school, you know, and my grandmother, the most amazing woman, you know, the only time I ever saw her cry was when they gave me that diagnosis, because when I was 16, the doctor gave me 6 months to live if I didn't do these experiments. They said that my kidneys would fail and I would die within 6 months. And she was on her knees crying to God, asking him to just spare my life and take hers instead. So I think I also pushed to live and overcome for them, because I learned very quickly that when you're sick, your family feels it as much or more than you do, the people who love you. So the way I overcame it was to kind of intellectualize it and say, okay, I have this interesting thing where my body's not working like it's supposed to. Let me get really interested in science. So also doing chemotherapy and missing school sometimes, reading my textbooks was a great distraction. So yeah, so I focused on science. I read my textbooks cover to cover, and I ended up graduating top 10 in my class in high school in spite of being on chemo for years, and got a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon, where I then went into genetic research for a few years before finally deciding to become a doctor. But yeah, I think originally I thought maybe I can do genetic research and find a cure for lupus. Then I decided that really my gift was in being by people's sides and teaching them how to have hope and perseverance through illness. And really, I thought that's what I would do. I thought that I would be able to help people emotionally be able to find happiness in their lives in spite of chronic illness. I never expected to accidentally find a way to reverse those diseases.
I love that. I mean, it's amazing to hear how what could have really destroyed you in so many ways has really turned into your success story. I mean, you're very proud of what you went through and how you've been able to turn it around, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that this is your origin story. You know, every superhero movie, the origin story is when something terrible happened. They were exposed to radiation, bitten by a spider, something happened that was really, really difficult. And yet that's what helped them realize what their superpowers were. And I really believe the hardest things that ever happened to us can turn into our greatest gifts once we move through them. And so I always try to encourage, especially now I see a lot of children with autoimmune disease. The youngest person is 2 years old with lupus. That, you know, I try to teach them that this is your origin story and you're a superhero. And superheroes, you know, you have to learn how to do really hard things in order to realize what your powers are later. So yeah, I'm very grateful that I was sick for so long. I'm also very grateful I've been healthy for 15 years. I have no illness, I have normal kidneys. I was able to have 2 children that I was told I could never have, that it would kill me to try. So I'm also, that's why I'm so determined to give that gift back as much as I can as well.
So let's talk about what most people know of as traditional treatment for autoimmune disorders. And they're different for the different disorders, of course, but there are some kind of standards that are out there. And talk about why they work on some level, you know, they like keep your symptoms at bay, but why they're also maybe not such a great long-term solution.
Yeah, you know, with autoimmune diseases, the treatments are not very palatable in general. It's kind of the thing that can help your symptoms also then creates an avalanche of other problems as well. So most of the focus of treatments for autoimmune diseases right now are on immunosuppression of some kind. So again, trying to shut down the immune system, steroids and chemotherapy. There's also different kinds of immune modulating medicines. Plaquenil's been in the news a lot, of course, because of the original thoughts that it could help with COVID, which have now been shown not to be true. But you know, these medicines are very difficult to take. They can cause a lot of problems long term. For example, being on steroids, yep, initially you feel a lot better, but if you continue taking them, it basically dissolves your bones, causes osteoporosis, can cause serious infections when your immune system can't fight back. You know, I saw a woman once who had rheumatoid arthritis from childhood, and she was on high-dose steroids for years, and then got an infection in her legs and ended up needing to get her legs amputated because the infections were so severe. You know, I see people who are in their early 20s who've already had 2 hip replacements from being on high-dose steroids. So it's like in the moment it can be miraculous. Long-term, there's risk. So we're constantly as physicians trying to do the benefit analysis, right? That, okay, how serious is the illness? Are your organs at risk? If they are, we have to really be aggressive, right? I wouldn't have chosen to do chemotherapy except that my kidneys were failing and it was dialysis or try this chemo. Okay. You know, do chemotherapy. Now I've been published in multiple cases of reversing end-stage kidney failure from lupus nephritis using nutrition alone. I've gotten people off the transplant list. If I'd had that option back then, I definitely would have chosen that one. But we didn't know. But the medicines are, they can be life-saving, and they also come with their own problems. And that's why I really encourage people, listen, if you need a medicine to save your life, do it. It's one of the great things about Western medicine is we can save lives like we couldn't have before. And you need to do everything you can to optimize your health, to minimize your need for those medicines, especially long term.
So before we get into how you've changed your treatment for your patients, I want to run down some of the most common autoimmune diseases out there, because I know a lot of the folks that are with us today, they're particularly interested because they have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Can we run down a few of them and kind of talk about some of the particulars of them? I don't want to get too down into the weeds, but as a general way of education, because there are just so many out there.
Right. Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, there's many, as I said, they list 80 when you're looking at the big lists that they try to generalize how many people have autoimmune diseases. But in my mind, they're actually really the same thing. You've got a condition where you've got a genetic predisposition, right? All of us have genes for different illnesses. Thank our parents and our other ancestors that we have our genes that predict what illnesses we can get. Then we have to trigger those genes, right? And I think that's the part that's missing for a lot of people is understanding that, you know, I didn't have lupus until I was 16, which means that gene got turned on, right? And genes that get turned on can get turned off as well. So there's genes for other illnesses too, heart disease, diabetes, but autoimmune diseases as well. So as a whole, autoimmune diseases, commonly you'll see ones against the thyroid, like Hashimoto's one of the most common ones you see, people with low thyroid, right? That one they don't tend to treat with immunosuppression because the way it's treated in Western medicine is the immune system will destroy your thyroid, but we can give you a pill to replace your thyroid hormone. So we'll just let that happen. We'll let that fire burn that forest down, give you thyroid hormone for life. The innate problem with that is once the thyroid's gone, it does continue. And that's why people who have thyroid issues end up later having problems with arthritis or other issues because it will mutate over time into other things because it's that same process. Rheumatoid arthritis, very common. I think most of the time in TV or cartoons, you think of an old lady with achy knees, but we do have young children getting rheumatoid arthritis as well. That tends to generally affect the joints. People feel really tired and achy joints. Psoriasis, people will get those kind of plaque skin lesions on their elbows, on their groin, and then that can expand out in their scalp as well. And then things like lupus. Lupus has become much more known. When I was 16, nobody knew what it was. Now, between all the celebrities, you got Selena Gomez and Tony Braxton and Nick, what's his name? Mariah Carey's ex-husband, Nick, I forgot his name, but there's
Cannon, Nick Cannon.
Cannon, thank you, Cannon. Yeah, sometimes the neuron needs to be massaged to fire. So, we have a lot of celebrities out there that have brought attention to it. I think Snoop Dogg's daughter or someone in his family has it. So we've had a lot more attention to lupus as well. Now, lupus is an extremely dangerous one because it doesn't just do things like attack the skin or the joints, but it can attack your internal organs. So for me, it was my kidneys. I treated people who had lupus in their brain, giving them seizures, liver, lungs, heart. So that one's very dangerous, and it affects people who are a lot younger typically. People who get lupus are usually diagnosed younger and they die younger, and so that one's very devastating itself. But again, it's really the same process. And that's why the same kind of nutrition can help all of them as well, because it's not like, oh, here's your diet for this and here's your diet for that. It's like, no, here's what your body needs to eliminate inflammation and to accelerate cellular repair, all of those things. But yeah, in my mind, they're all the same. And that's why a lot of people get multiple. They'll say, oh, first I had lupus, but now I have lupus and Sjogren's and scleroderma. It's really the same thing. It's just which organ it attacks is where we come up with the diagnosis, basically.
So you mentioned the whole part of nutrition and how nutrition, it sounds like it's a trigger and also can help fix things. Am I reading that right?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of the most mind-blowing things that I've ever discovered. Like I said, I'm a traditional Western trained scientist, and I spent so much of my life reading and memorizing and learning all these things. I mean, I went through medical school before we had things like iPhones. We had to just memorize everything, or shove all the books in your pockets. Remember the med students with like 5 books on each side. So everything I ever learned said that these were genetic, you treat them with meds, and it's going to just continue over time. They're a patient for life, they never get better. And that included what I believe about myself. I wish that I'd had some kind of brilliant download that I realized the truth. Because people asked me that, I said, no, it was an accident. I had no idea, because I was trained to believe this was true by my own doctors and then by my own medical training. But when you look at the pathways, so I have classes I show online where I show people the pathways. They're in my book, Goodbye Lupus, as well, where you look at the immune system and how it works. And you've got these 2 pathways. You've got the inflammatory immune system, very important. Your inflammatory immune system gets activated when you get a viral infection or a bacterial infection, or when you bang your knee and it swells up. Those are all inflammatory immune cells repairing it. So very important pathway. And then you've got your anti-inflammatory immune system, which then cleans up the damage, right? That fixes it all, brings you back to baseline and gets you back to healthy again. And both of those parts of our immune system are created out of the foods we eat. So unfortunately, what's happened, especially in the Western diet, is everything we eat fuels the inflammatory pathway. It comes from arachidonic acid, which comes from eggs, meat, oils. And you think about people's diet, eggs, meat, oils, eggs for breakfast, and then you put a dairy. So then you get a cheeseburger, fries, you get the oils. And so everything people are eating is fueling this inflammatory pathway over and over and over again. And yet the anti-inflammatory pathway is created exclusively out of omega-3 fatty acids. How many people do you know who are eating flax seeds and chia seeds and things like that every day? Nobody. So that's what's happened, is we've created this cascade of inflammatory immune cells that are out of control, and those trigger your genes for illness. So that's true for autoimmune. It's also true for heart disease, diabetes, cancers. All of that pathway gets out of control. The immune system's now unregulated. We can't repair the damage. So what I do is I shut off that valve. You think of it as like the hot and cold nozzles on your sink. Right? So you've got this flooding on one side. I shut off that nozzle for the inflammatory immune system, and I flood them on the other side so that we can repair the damage. And what happens is, amazingly, is that even decades of damage disappears. I mean, I've been sick for over 12 years. I'd had mini strokes in medical school. And yet, within a matter of months, all of my labs were normal. And that was 15 years ago. So after that happened to me, I had to really stop what I was doing and dive back into the research and try to understand, what is the link between diet and the immune system and cellular repair? Is this even possible? What I've experienced, or was I somehow blessed by God? And was this a miracle? And so my husband and I are both scientists, and we spent over a year reverse engineering and trying to understand the connection between nutrition and disease, which was never taught in medical school, by the way. We don't learn anything about diet, nothing at all. Yet who do you ask for diet advice? Your doctor? He just read Men's Health. He doesn't know, he's just, so we reverse engineered it. We started treating people for free to make sure we could get consistent results. And once we found a system where everybody who did it got better, that's when we finally started teaching it. So it's extremely scientific, but I had to learn this outside of the scope of what I was taught through my entire career.
So what made you try it the first time? Like, I understand now, like how, you were able to research it, look at other people's studies on nutrition and inflammation. Like, I get it now, but how did you do it back then? Because I'm guessing you went off your meds and did this.
No, I stayed on my meds.
You stayed on them. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a complete accident. What happened is I fell in love. Okay. Thomas Tadlock, amazing human being. He's my favorite person. We're actually going to be married 15 years next month. And so when we fell in love, I was actually finishing up medical school. I was taking my injections every day of blood thinners because I'd had recent mini strokes, and, taking my medicines every day. And he wanted to marry me in spite of my illness. I had to sit him down and say, listen, I can't have children. You're going to have to take care of me when I become disabled. I'm not going to live a long life. You know, like this is not exactly a great answer to a proposal. At 28, I wanted him to know what he was getting into. You know, that's not really what most people would choose for their future. And he said, I'd rather have a short life with you than a lifetime with anybody else. And I'm just going to make it the best darn life you could have. And I said, okay, great, let's get married, right? So what happened was, my husband is he's a celebrity trainer. And so he was training people who were on MTV at the time. And I wanted to look like someone on MTV for my wedding, right? Pure vanity, nothing else. Because I tell you what, if you want to be overweight and sick, the best diet for that is hospital food. So I was eating hospital food as a medical student, right, all day long. And I was overweight and obviously unhealthy. I didn't know there was a connection back then. And so my husband also went to Carnegie Mellon, and he's a scientist as well. And what his specialty and understanding was that there is the right way to eat to stimulate your metabolism. That you're not just born with a slow metabolism or fast metabolism, it's created by your nutrition. And you can create a fast metabolism at any age. He has his own best-selling book, Miracle Metabolism, all about this, right? So I said, I want to look like an MTV star for our wedding. So he designed a diet for me after reassuring me that I was already perfect. He didn't want it to be a trap. I said, no, I know you love me, but we were going to elope to Maui with just our best friends and our parents. Okay. So at the time I was eating vegetarian, which sounds like it's healthy, but it's not when it's French fries and ranch dressing on your salad. And I ate lots of eggs and cheese all the time. So he had to create a diet for me where he'd never trained a vegetarian before, but he said saturated fat makes you fat. You can't eat all that dairy and eggs. It's just going to make it worse. So, okay. So I didn't eat meat though. So he said, okay, let's do tofu instead of meat. And then we'll do everything else the same. High amounts of raw vegetables, high amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, water intake, optimal water intake. I was drinking a gallon a day. And I changed my diet. And within 3.5 months, I went from a size 11 to a size 3. I was ripped. I looked gorgeous at our wedding. I was very happy. But what I noticed was very quickly after starting these, my diet changes, I felt really good. I'd had chronic migraines since I was 14. I had no headaches. I was now an intern working 30-hour shifts multiple times a week for my residents. And I had so much energy, I could go to the gym after a 30-hour shift, which is not normal if you don't have lupus. But with lupus, I mean, I had so much energy. I had zero arthritis. I felt better than I'd ever felt in my life. So right before the wedding, I went to my new doctor. I did my residency in California at Harvard UCLA. So I went to my new doctor and he ran my lab tests and he said that they were negative for lupus. So he assumed it was a lab mistake. I did too. I'd had lupus for 12 years at this point and I was still taking my meds every day. So he said, enjoy your wedding, come back, we'll retest. I said, okay. Went to my wedding, came back, and now my lupus tests were still normal, and my cholesterol, which I was told was high because of my genetics since I was in my 20s, nothing to do with all the cheese and eggs, was now normal. The antibodies that cause blood clots, gone, and nobody could figure out why. And they said, okay, well, you have an incurable disease, so you must still have it, we just can't see it. Okay? So, they thought maybe it was, they considered it remission, but in remissions with lupus, I've been in remission before, you still test positive on your labs, you still get arthritis and things. I've been in remission where I still did take some medicine for arthritis, this and that, but I wasn't currently dying, never normal labs. So I kept taking my meds for a year after I had normal labs with zero symptoms because I dutifully took them because I have lupus, and even if I don't know that I have it. And finally, after a year of still taking the injections for the blood thinners, I asked my rheumatologist why I was still on medication. And he said, you're treating my anxiety because I'm scared to take you off them. So, okay.
I love that because that's got to be so true. I mean, I could just picture,
So, I said, listen, I don't want to die, but I don't want to take these medicines if I don't need them. So we made an agreement. If I had any return of symptoms, I would come back. I stopped my medicines. I kept coming back regularly. He finally fired me as a patient because he said, you're not sick. So I'll be here if you ever need me, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd been seeing a rheumatologist since I was 16 and I got fired at 28. So I got fired by the rheumatologist and that was 14 years ago. And there's never been any relapse. So I wish I could say that we had this brilliant idea, but no, I fell in love with the right guy. I tried this diet and it healed me. And that just changed the whole course of what I do now.
Wow. I mean, I have to tell you, like, I know we're not supposed to look at the chat, but I can't help it because everyone's like, oh my gosh, I love this story. And I feel the same way. And you got all teary talking about it. And I love it. I just love everything about it. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty. You know, I think we all kind of have a basic understanding that if we eat better, generally, we're going to be healthier. Like, we all get that part. But there's some really specific things that you've discovered that are crucial, especially for folks who got their immune system all out of whack.
100%. Yeah. Because what does that mean, right? Eat better. Ooh, right? I was doing an interview this morning where I said, you know, people are trying to eat healthier. So what do? You go down the snack aisle and you buy all the stuff that says healthy, vitamins, low fat. Meanwhile, that's all processed junk that's making you sicker, right? But who knows how to do this? It's why I'm so busy constantly teaching this. And I teach a lot of it for free online. I teach my entire protocol for free online. I have testified to the USDA twice, trying to advocate for people to learn and to be given the right information, because the USDA recommendations are based off what profits industries, not what actually helps people get healthy. So I've been fighting that battle on behalf of people, you know, Americans that need that help. But it's very difficult to know what's healthy, right? If you Google, you're going to hear opposite things, right? For every article that says plant-based diets are better, somebody who's being paid by the meat associations writing an article saying, no, our brains are big because of meat. And you know, I mean, it's just, so how does the average person even know what to do? So that's why I teach my stuff for free. That way, you know, I'm not getting paid by big kale. I've never gotten a check from big broccoli. This is just me giving of my time. And what's awesome is I get messages constantly from people who have healed 100% for free just by going to my classes and following my videos. And it gives me so much joy to be able to do that for folks. So yes, there are certain foods that definitely get you sick. In Goodbye Lupus, I tell my story and then I give the 6 steps to healing, and it's very short and to the point because I want people to read it and then go do it, right? So the 3 things that make you sick, that accelerate your inflammatory immune system, are animal products like meat and dairy, oils, all the different kinds of vegetable oils and things, including coconut oil. I don't know who does the publicity for coconut oil, but use it on your skin, don't eat it. Oh my goodness, processed foods, meat and dairy. Oh my God, I just had a blank here. So this is a really important thing that you want to try to avoid eating those kind of foods, okay? And the processed foods, yeah. So if you're eating those foods, which like I said, most Americans do, processed foods is your bag of chips, is your cereal that you had for breakfast that said healthy on it, right? All the sugars, all those things are processed foods, right? Cooking oils and using everything, right? Meat and dairy, again, part of most people's diets all day long. Hey, especially Houston, right? It's like the beef state. So all of those things will progress the inflammation. And again, if you don't have any fires brewing and you eat something that has some inflammation in it, it's fine. You have an inflammatory immune system that needs to get fed sometimes, okay. But if you've got an out of control fire, you don't want to light any matches, right? We want to shut that down as quickly as possible. So that's the majority of what people eat. And it's why even people who are trying to eat healthy tend to still be sick because, oh, I'll eat low fat dairy. You know, I'll eat, you know, processed foods that look like they're healthier. I always tell people, it says healthy in the package, don't buy it. It's not good. Right? Now, the foods that actually put out the fires. This is so important. And I always tell people, even if you're not ready to eliminate the foods that make you sicker, at least start eating the antidote, okay? Number 1 is going to be vegetables. Nobody likes that answer, by the way. Everybody's hoping. I saw a meme on Facebook the other day where it said, what's the key to longevity and perfect health? Please don't say it's kale. Please don't say it's kale. It's kale. It's kale. I have a T-shirt that says only kale can save us now. So cruciferous vegetables like kale and broccoli, those have the highest dose of the nutrients that your body needs to repair itself, the highest dose. So you could eat fruit all day, you could eat cucumbers all day, and you'll never get what you could have gotten out of a bunch of kale. So if you're trying to optimize your health and you want to do it in the smallest meal possible, then the cruciferous vegetables, especially in the raw form, right? Those will give you the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that you need to repair the damage in your cells, because every one of the cells of your body actually is programmed to repair itself. That's why if you get a paper cut, you don't need to sew it. Your body knows how to repair itself, but it needs the tools. So if you're not eating any of those kind of vegetables, you're starving yourself of the ability to get better. And by the way, cruciferous vegetables are the only ones that have been shown in research to be anti-cancer as well. So you have cancer in your family, you need to make sure those are part of your diet. Omega-3 fatty acids, those create your anti-inflammatory immune system, as I said earlier. If you don't consume them, you won't have that part of your immune system active. And they're very heat sensitive, so eating some cooked fish or something is not gonna do it. You wanna get them in a pure form, which is why I like flax and chia seeds. You can go to a local market, and I think at Sprouts, it's like $1.29 a pound for flax seeds, right? Buy that, you know, and just have, when people are sick, I tell them to have a half cup a day. If you're healthy, just trying to be healthier, handful a day. And water. Most people never talk about how important water is for your immune system, for cell repair, for your metabolism. And most people are drinking less than even good for human health. You know, the FDA says 64 ounces. For disease reversal, I use 96 to a gallon for people. So when you combine those ingredients, you are now creating a medication, as it were, that can actually eliminate the cause of the illness instead of just suppress it like the pills that you take. And what I do for people is most people don't like those options. They don't know what to do with flax seeds. They don't like to eat raw vegetables, and they don't like to drink water. So what I figured out is if you put them all together into your blender and make a green smoothie, so you put the greens, you put the flax or chia seeds in there, you put the water in there, and then you fill the rest of the blender with your favorite fruit, bananas, frozen mangoes, frozen cherries, pineapple, and you blend it. The fruit makes it sweet enough for you to drink it, and now you've got all the nutrition you need for your health through a straw. So even if you do go ahead and eat something inflammatory, you're at least having something there with you that can start fighting the inflammation, start repairing the damage. Of course, if you're sick, you don't want to continue eating those things, but I always tell people start by adding what you're missing, because what happens is you feel so much better, you start to crave eating better. I always call my smoothies a gateway drug to healthy eating. You know, you drink it and you have great energy and you feel vibrant, your skin looks good, and you go, you know what, I want more of that. But that's a great place for people to start. And I give free recipes. We have a website called smoothieshred.com. My husband created. That's all free recipes and videos. You don't even have to put an email address, anything. It's just a public service for people to get started with getting healthier.
Now, you talked a little bit about, at least for your start of your journey, exercise was a big part of that. I mean, your husband's a personal trainer. What role does exercise kind of fit into this whole big picture?
So there's a lot of things, like I said, that can affect your health besides nutrition. Nutrition is primary. I always loved exercise. I've always been a positive thinker. And I think those helped me through my life, especially dealing with chronic illness. But then when I added the nutrition, it was magical, right? But what I found for a lot of people is they don't even have those other components in place. They've got a lot of trauma and anxiety and depression, all which disrupt your cortisol levels and create inflammation just like the nutrition can. We see, you know, people with anxiety and trauma and depression, they have the same kind of disruption in their cortisol and inflammatory markers that people with autoimmune disease have, which is why it's also a trigger. And exercise in itself. So exercise is anti-inflammatory and it's antidepressant. It actually works better. When they did studies, it works better as an antidepressant than the pills, but nobody wants to take it. It said it's the most effective and most underutilized. So some people with arthritis and pain will say, oh, I can't exercise, but we can all do something. If people have chronic pain, I suggest starting in the swimming pool. There's no resistance there for you, or you know, there's no weight on your joints. Work with a physical therapist to figure out ways in which you move. You have achy knees, use your upper body, or vice versa. But find ways to move. It's going to be good for your brain, and it's also really good for your heart, which we all need for every day of our life. And it's anti-inflammatory as well. So for example, when people do rapid recovery with me, which is very intense program, 4 or 6 weeks where you have to have me breathing down your neck every day, like an overbearing mother. What did you eat? How did you sleep? Did you exercise? Did you meditate? Every day? So because what I find is if I can get people to embrace all the aspects of healthy living, exercise, the mental health side of it, like gratitude, key ingredient for happiness is learning gratitude and how to solve problems without getting negative and eliminating hopelessness, right? So I work on their exercise, I work on their mental health and their nutrition at the same time. Many people are symptom-free within 2 to 6 weeks completely. I just met with somebody yesterday as a follow-up who did my group who was symptom-free in 10 days. from his autoimmune disease. So the combination of attacking every area of your lifestyle in a positive way, exercise, mental health, and nutrition, that is the fast track to the best health possible.
So we've been talking about all of these things that can be kind of triggers, you know, the awful foods, the processed foods, the dairy, and, you know, things that aren't so great for your body. And then the trauma that you talked about, not exercising. So it makes me wonder, what part does all of that play in getting the disease in the first place and triggering that autoimmune disorder?
Yeah, and it's all connected, right? So, you know, people are always trying to figure out, why did I get sick? And they're taking antibody tests. Like, I had Epstein-Barr. It turns out we all had Epstein-Barr if we went to public high school. You know, like all of us that were exposed, that's the mono virus, right? So, you know, people are always trying to figure out what triggered it. And I find it's not really a light switch, but a storm, just like you were implying there, that there's a combination of bad diet, right? So I was bottle fed instead of breastfed. I was given, you know, formula because my mom's doctor told her it's even better than nature, you know, right? So formula fed, and I lived off Chef Boyardee and macaroni and cheese and pizza. And then on top of that, right, puberty, right? So there's hormonal stressors. And then, you know, for some folks, there's also trauma. Now, I personally did not have trauma. I was raised in a beautiful family, but now we've also been able to see that trauma can be passed down through genetics, especially on the maternal side. So having Holocaust survivor grandmother did create some trauma that could have shown up directly into my mother and myself, which is a whole nother fascinating topic in itself. But, you know, for me, that wasn't really an issue, although both of my grandfathers died when I was 14, and that's when my migraine started. So, you know, they found people who are in mourning have high inflammation levels, just like people with autoimmune disease as well. So for most people I talk to, there are a series of things that were happening. Many people I see, they either just gave birth or just got pregnant, hormonal. They had somebody in their family that passed away. They just got finished with their finals. I had someone that I just helped heal from Crohn's, who that's when she triggered. Every time during her finals, she ends up in the hospital, right? So the stress of that, or stress at work. So there's definitely this combination that we see from many people where it's stressors and nutrition, where, you know, the stress creates damage, but your nutrition can't repair it. And now you get into this kind of chronic realm, which again, through Western medicine, we can just continue your life, but we can't stop the process. We can't stop the momentum of the forest fire with medicines alone.
So talk about how people can talk to their doctor about this, because I know that this was, you know, you didn't cut out your doctor, you didn't cut out your medication right away. And I'm guessing you don't want anybody else to do those things either.
No, not at all.
So talk about how that works, because, you know, if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, your doctors or doctors are a pretty big part of your wellness journey, you know, or what you kind of perceive is what you're on your wellness journey. So talk about how to navigate that.
You know, it's interesting because when I started doing this 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, bringing this to the public, back then doctors were all like, this is crazy, don't listen to her, snake oil, even though I'm not selling anything, you know, they just, because if you've never been taught it, we just are taught to disregard it, right? Like, oh, they would have taught that to me if it mattered, so disregard it. Nowadays, I get referrals all day long from neurologists, surgeons, rheumatologists, internal medicine doctors. I get referrals constantly, and at least 25% of my practice or more is me treating other doctors, pharmaceutical reps, nurses. They're less compliant than everybody else. I actually just saw a rheumatologist yesterday who was on a terrible diet. She was eating one of those keto type diets, like a bacon cheeseburger, no bread. So what, I told her, I can hear horror music playing when I'm going over your diet. Like, it was just scary, right? But she came to me because one of her patients, she's a rheumatologist, and one of her patients was looking so good and not taking her medicines. And she said, well, how are you looking this good? And she said, I'm on Dr. Goldner's protocol. So she made an appointment with me because she has lupus also. So she's a rheumatologist with lupus who said, you know, wait a minute, my patient looks really good. Let me try this too. So it's changing, thankfully. But depending on your doctor, if you have a younger doctor, they're probably more hip to all this information, because there's been years and years of information published, not just by myself, but other physicians, showing that plant-based diets are optimal for human health and can reverse diseases, whether it's heart disease, autoimmune disease, diabetes. So younger docs tend to be more aware. Some of the older docs don't keep up on reading the journals anymore. They're not really, aware of that. And unfortunately, instead of saying, I don't know, some of them will say, no, it won't help. Which to me, and I mean this, I really think at this point it's malpractice for a doctor to say nutrition won't help you, because the information's there, and I know that we all took a pledge to do no harm. And if you don't know something, there's never harm in saying, I don't know anything about nutrition. No harm done. Then they know to go search for someone who knows. But when they say, hogwash, nutrition won't help, just pills, then you're actually stopping somebody who could potentially be able to optimize their health. And I think all of us know, even if this is the first time you've ever heard of disease reversal, especially with nutrition, you probably have some inkling that you're healthier when you eat your vegetables, right, than when you eat your cheeseburger. That there's some, maybe your grandmother told you. We should all be able to acknowledge that. I think what's different is really understanding how powerful nutrition can be. I think that's largely misunderstood in the medical world. So I recommend you stick with your doctor. You tell them what I told mine. I don't want to die. I just don't want to take more medicine than I need, and I want to do everything I can to get my health back. So I would love to keep seeing you. I'm going to start doing this nutrition. I'm going to work with Dr. Goldner. I'm going to try this from the book. And I want you to stay with me and take my labs and see how I'm doing. And if my symptoms go away, I'd like you to work with me on tapering my medicines. So, I think it should be a relationship, because these are serious illnesses. They're life-threatening illnesses. I don't want people just running off and stopping medicines that could potentially be keeping them alive. And at the same time, there's a lot you can do to optimize your health all on your own through exercise and great self-care for your mental health and eating the best foods possible.
Well, and maybe it'll be like one of your patients, and turn around and educate your own doctor about ways they can be better.
All the time. Yeah, all the time. I was actually interviewed by a cardiologist years ago. This must have been like 8 years ago. She's a cardiologist out in Florida she was a cardiac surgeon, and she had a patient show up who had a yearly checkup, and the heart disease was gone. All the labs looked normal. And she said, are you taking your medicines? They said, I never took the medicines. She goes, how? Your heart looks so good. And she said, I read a book, and I went on a plant-based diet, and I reversed my heart disease. And she was so blown away, because she'd never seen that before. So she started doing the research, and now her entire practice, she's turned it around where she puts all of her patients on plant-based diets. She does a podcast and stuff to teach them. And it's all because that patient showed up back at her office just to show her what was possible. So while there are some docs that don't, I had someone who was on the kidney transplant list. In 6 weeks, we doubled her kidney function, no longer needs a transplant. And her nephrologist said, I don't know what it is. It's not food. It's a miracle. So he became religious instead of being willing to look at the science, right? I don't know. But so some docs are just not going to listen. They're not interested, but others will be really excited. And, sometimes people do need to switch doctors if they're not getting the support they need.
Well, we've got a bunch of questions. And so I want to start ticking through some of these.
Okay.
One of the first ones that came across, let me find out who it was. I'll scroll back up. I don't know who it was, but they said they have Hashimoto's, and they wanted to know about gluten and the role that plays in kind of this whole storm that many folks are dealing with.
Yeah, gluten has gotten a really bad rap. There was one study I ever found that said that people with autoimmune, like up to 40% could have some sensitivity to gluten. What my experience has been is that people who have autoimmune disease, remember, you've got constant chronic inflammation in your immune system, and your immune system also handles things like allergies and sensitivities. So when people have autoimmune disease, they often also have weird allergies, sensitivities, often to things that are perfectly healthy, like bananas or something. So what I find is once we get the inflammation under control, those sensitivities usually go away as well. In fact, I've had 2 people that I've worked with that have completely reversed celiac disease. One of them is a doctor who's back to eat, and celiac is genetic, and they're back to being able to eat gluten and wheat products again, which is amazing. So I see it all again as just this overzealous, out of control inflammatory immune system. So yeah, if you're trying to reverse Hashimoto's, the safest thing to do would be not to eat those, just in case you're one of those people. I was never sensitive to gluten, so it wasn't an issue for me. But it's not part of the healing foods, right? The cruciferous vegetables, omega-3s, water intake, those are the most important things to eat. And you can always try without gluten. If you feel better, don't eat it. but it's not one of those things where everybody with autoimmune disease can't tolerate gluten or will always not be able to tolerate gluten.
Got it. So Kathleen, already doing your smoothies daily, she says. She wants to know what your thoughts are. I know, right? Yay, Kathleen. She wants to know what your thoughts are about making those ahead of time and then refrigerating them. Is there any downgrade in nutrition by doing that?
You don't really have to worry about a downgrade in nutrition if you're consuming them within 24 hours. I mean, yes, over time it goes down a bit, but if you're consuming an entire blender of greens and omega-3s and you're getting more nutrition you ever had in your life. So I usually tell people, finish it by the end of the day. And you'll know when it's not good anymore because you'll smell it. You'll open it up and go, nope, I don't really want to partake in that. Don't freeze it. That also decreases nutrients. But yeah, if you make a blender in the morning, you can finish it by the end of the day. That's fine. Some people only like the taste of it fresh, or they don't like that the omega-3s make it thicker during the day, so they'll make half and half. I'm all for easy and fast. I'm busy. I'd rather just make it all up front and just water it down later or whatever and just keep going. But yeah, nutrition-wise, that's fine.
Anna wants to know if there's particular foods. You've talked a little bit about the flax and the chia seeds, the water, your cruciferous vegetables. Are there other things that you find are really effective? She said that her mom swears by aloe vera. Is that like a thing?
I haven't seen that be particularly useful. It's a bit of a laxative. Some people like that. But, my whole approach is using supermarket foods, that this doesn't have to be expensive or exotic. Everything you need, you can just get from the supermarket. So is there some potential benefit to aloe vera? Maybe. I haven't seen it be necessary though. So it's kind of like when people go, oh, I found an exotic omega-3 that grows in the rainforest of Peru for like $40 for an ounce. I'm like, okay, you can use it if you want, but $1.29 at Sprouts, pound bag of flax seeds, right? So I try to make it as simple as possible. So if your mom likes it and feels good with it, great, use it. But I haven't seen it be necessary for people.
Awesome. Alexandra had a question about someone who has anemia. So if you're extremely anemic, how does that kind of fit into all of this?
Well, part of that depends on the reason you're anemic. So for example, I see people with autoimmune disease all the time, especially lupus, who will get bone marrow suppression as part of their lupus, which means that they will have low counts of all different kinds of blood counts, red counts, white counts, platelet counts, all sorts of different counts will be suppressed. So getting the immune system healthy again, all their blood counts return to normal, right? Versus someone who's anemic because they have a bleed. Like if someone has low red counts, but everything else is normal, you should be getting a colonoscopy. We should be finding out why you have a low red count. Some people have issues with absorbing iron correctly, and they might need an iron supplement. So it's very hard to just give a statement of, here's what you do for your anemia. You want to definitely have it diagnosed by your doctor, figure out why. But if you're trying to ask about whether or not people eating a plant-based diet need more iron than people on a meat-based diet, not at all. You can get iron very well actually from plant-based sources. You don't need to necessarily supplement that unless you have some other condition that affects your ability to absorb it.
A lot of folks have been asking about your newsletter, which Bianca was great to put up, which is goodbyelupus.com. So if you need to know what that is, it's in the chat. Somebody else was asking about the website for the smoothies. Karen put that up for us. Thank you, Karen. Smoothieshred.com. I love it. Everybody's taking care of everybody's business before we even get there. And then somebody else just asked about where we can get your books. Where can we find your book?
So my book's on Amazon. Goodbye
easy.
Lupus, I'll tell you what they are so you can figure out what you want. Goodbye Lupus is my story of reversing lupus, the detailed version of it, and the 6 steps to reversing disease in supermarket foods. It's very to the point, and it has saved countless lives. People follow it. Now, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease is the book that I just released this past year. That one is much thicker because that book is, of course, dozens of case studies reversing many autoimmune diseases. So people who are worried, is it just lupus? No, so I have case studies in psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, Sjogren's, all sorts of different illnesses. And as well as things like heart disease and diabetes. So those are there, but the majority of the book is actually the emotional and mental side of changing your lifestyle. So basically, if you read Goodbye Lupus, which is like 100 pages, and you still didn't change your health, why? And it's because changing your diet is not just an issue about having the right information. Diets are traditions, and they are addictions, and they are emotional, and it's about peer pressure, and it's about so many different things, and self-confidence. So a lot of people don't take action because they're depressed or traumatized. They don't have the right support. They have a negative way of speaking to themselves. So the majority of the book is actually all the different ways that I help people who work with me privately to overcome all of those issues. I've gotten beautiful feedback from people that that's what they actually needed to finally just start eating healthy again, was to work through the emotional part of it. So that's the difference between them. The Goodbye Autoimmune, I summarize the foods like I did today, but I don't go deep into them because that's Goodbye Lupus. But and then the Green Smoothie Recipe book is Green Smoothie Recipes. And I have free recipes at smoothieshred.com, but it's, you know, it's got like 28 of them for people who are looking for more variety. Some people like variety, consistency matters most, but all of those are on Amazon.
We'll close out with one last question. Kathleen wants to know about organic, because I know you said you want everything to be supermarket accessible. Organic's pretty accessible now. So do you feel like that's important for people to invest in?
Listen, if you can get organic food, it's the best, right? One, the soil is better for organic food, so there's more nutrition in the plant, which is important, because a lot of the reason I have people eat so many greens nowadays is because the soil's become depleted. So we don't get as much nutrition as we used to from that. So organic has more nutrition. Of course, it doesn't have all the GMOs and the pesticides, which have potential for harm. That said, the more important thing, if it's a choice between regular kale or no kale, buy the kale, right? When I healed from my disease 15 years ago, I was an intern making $30,000 a year, but living in an apartment that cost $1,100 a month in LA. I did not buy anything that was organic. I didn't even know what that was back then. I bought what was on sale. So I didn't eat anything that was organic, and my disease still went away. And I've had people write to me who healed for free, following me online, who are on welfare, who went to Walmart and they bought their produce and their disease went away. So while there is always a benefit to getting organic if you can, most importantly is actually eating the right foods. So the benefit of eating those foods is more powerful than whatever risk you would take from getting the pesticide exposure.
Awesome. Well, I know that we've had so many questions. I think we answered all the questions, but we also have lots of thank yous in there too, which I know you can't really see all of the chat, but because we're talking, but so many thank yous. I'm going to send it over to Linda Rhodes now to kind of give us some closing remarks.
Okay. I'm not good at multitasking. I'm the person with Hashimoto's. And so thank you. It was inspiring to hear that. Was diagnosed 5 years ago, and it's life-changing to have an autoimmune disease. But thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I hope everyone on today's Doc Talk enjoyed the conversation. If you're interested in seeing some of our other virtual presentations and series, please go to www.thewomensfund.org and click on our events page and you'll see those. We're working on our November Doc Talk and hope to bring you something just exciting as today's conversation. If you have any, if you have topics that you're interested in, please email us at womfund@thewomensfund.org and we will, start looking for a speaker just like Dr. Goldner. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, John. Thank you, the John P. McGovern Foundation, for making today possible.
Well, and Linda, I'm so excited because this is one of those talks that I hope all of my friends watched, but if they didn't, I'm about to share this link with so many people. I heard so many of my friends' stories as we were talking, whether it's directly about an autoimmune disorder or even, as Dr. Goldner was talking about, people with cancer in their family that want to make these changes to avoid that. So I encourage all of you, if you enjoyed today's program, go and like us on Facebook, stay up to date on future events just like this one. We've got virtual presentations all over the place. And so it's just super great. So I can't wait to see the recording from today so I can share it with everybody.
Okay, thank you. It'll probably, for our website, to access it through our website, it does take us like 48 business hours to get it up.
What, Linda?
I know, I'm not tech savvy.
I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you.
Make sure you get your daily iodine dose. People with Hashimoto's, that's been a new issue that I've only seen in my practice probably the past 5 to 10 years, is that now that everyone's eating the fancy salt or they're on no salt diets, nobody's getting iodine anymore. And that's accelerating thyroid disease. So 150 micrograms a day is what we're supposed to get. which is 3/4 of a teaspoon of iodized salt. But if you're not eating iodized salt, you need to make sure you get your iodine. So drink your
Quarter of
smoothie,
a teaspoon.
3/4 of a teaspoon of iodized salt will give you all you need. But make sure you do your iodine, drink your smoothies, and your disease will get better. So, but let me know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Goodbye, everyone, and we hope to see you soon.